Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Positive Traction with your host, Coach Henry. Today, we're actually, you might have seen him before. We did as they call Riverside platform, online interview. But I really felt compelled to share more of Carlos's story. It's a beautiful story. Well, it's his life, but he's been able to use it as a testimony. And I feel like I just had some more things that I wanted to really bring out in him to share that I think will be a blessing for a lot of people, including myself. So without further ado, we got Carlos. Thank you for being a guest again. This time we get to do it in person.
Yeah.
And by the way, everybody, this is the first time we get to meet in person, which is such a tremendous blessing. So please welcome Carlos. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what's going on with you.
Yeah, thank you. First and foremost, appreciate you inviting me to come back. I remember our first interview is a memorable one for me, so I really appreciate that, and I'm honored to be here with you. I tell my story a lot, and whenever I tell it, I typically start when I was, my childhood growing up. But growing up for me was pretty much normal, like a normal type of environment. I would say a good environment, a sheltered environment. So a lot of my life at that point was set up to, go on and I guess be successful in life, go to college and all that. Both my parents were educated, went to college. We grew up in a really good neighborhood. I went to, Catholic school, played baseball. But, my father, when I was about 12 years old, my father one day left our family. He decided to, he had committed adultery. He had created another family in secrecy. And at the end of the day, my mother sat me and my sister down at the kitchen table and told us that he was no longer coming back. And so everything in our lives kind of spiraled downhill from there. You never understand the impact that one person can create in others until you've lived through it. And in retrospect, I look at that as one decision my father made created so much destruction from that, including the path I went on, which was running away at 13 years old, ending up in the streets, homeless, addicted to drugs, gang member by 14, and influenced by the next men in my life who were all negative individuals in the environment I grew up in. So because of that, I ended up going in and out of juvenile facilities. I would go to different placement homes and run away, go back to the streets. And by the time I was 18 years old, I was on the run for armed robbery, bank robbery, home invasion robbery, and I was arrested. And I went to court, and they were trying to give me life in prison for 9 months. Every time I went to court, it was life in prison. Until one day, the district attorney offered me a deal for 20 years with 2 strikes. And I was 19 years old. Toughest decision I ever made in my life. But I remember being alone in that courtroom, and I realized that I really didn't have much in the world anyway. So the decision, came really easy for me to make at that point. So 19 years old, I hit prison, maximum security prison, and first decade in made me worse than the person that entered prison.
Right.
Yeah, I was taught first day in there, thing I was taught was how to make a knife. Second thing was how to stitch up a wound if I get stabbed. And third thing was about pressure points in case I have to kill somebody. So that was my teachings. For 10 years, I adopted that mindset, and I stopped thinking about freedom, and I stopped thinking about what it felt like. And I kind of lost that feeling. And so that world became my new world, and I gave my life to it. And I ended up becoming a shot caller in prison about a decade in. And for those who don't know what that is, it's a person who runs the prison yard for a particular group. And usually when you get to that position, you have too much power. So then they come and they take you away and they put you into the hole, solitary confinement. And that's where I ended up. And I was there for 3 years. And that's when my transformation happened.
Well, guys, if you're listening to what I'm hearing is I want to go back to something because you said it in the beginning is you grew up with 2 parents, college educated parents, and what you feel was a good suburban type life, just kind of the path that most people want their kids to go through, go to college. and then a decision that your father made disrupted the entire ecosystem of your home, right? So I think it's important to put in content to people. I want to share this to give you a moment. I wanted to get in front of you, Carlos, because people people sometimes don't take a moment to appreciate things, and you know this. You probably talk about it a lot until something's been taken from you, and then some people come back, and some people don't. I think part of your passion is to help people not have to go there and have a better appreciation for life and do something good with it, right? So I bring you back there because all of us, I share for me, how many times have I done some things that could have gone bad easily, that I could have been in your shoes easily. I was born in East LA at General Hospital. For those who don't know, it's a show. I think it's still on the nurses were on strike back in 1969, the year I was born. And I'll never forget 5, 6, 7 years old, trying to protect my mom. My dad kind of was no longer around at that particular time. And I remember seeing all the gangs, it's just a long time ago. And my mom, I'm trying to protect, but I was little, 6, 7, but puffing my chest out. And my mom was able to meet a man and move this county, and my life was different in many other ways, but horrible in other ways, right? So give and take in different ways. I bring all that to content to you, Carlos, because you wrote this book. Those that are watching the YouTube, it's called Warrior in the Garden, 7 Rules for Men. And the reason that when you shared it and I looked through it, what I love about what you're sharing is that what meant to destroy you, through the grace of God, you're doing great with it. And it's not easy. You were down a certain path. I can only imagine the anger and the rage you felt, the betrayal, certain things you might have felt with your dad, especially if I may talk about that he decided to have a whole other family. And it's just a lot that you had to process. And you had no choice but to go into prison and become the man, or you're going to get eaten alive. And you know that, and you talk about it. Mm-hmm. You became such a man, if you will, that you became the shot caller. Mm-hmm. But because of that, it threw you into solitary confinement. And we're going to go before that. Was there any time in those first 10 years that you were able to rectify anything with your father? Did he ever come back in the picture? Did he ever own anything he did?
When I got out of prison, before I got out of prison, I forgave my father within myself. I didn't talk to him and tell him that. I just forgave him because I knew that I didn't want people to remember me for the person that I used to be. So I was going to give him a fair shot too, to allow for me to get to know who he is now. And so when I got out, I reached out to him and went to visit him and spent time with him, and got to know a completely different man today. A good man who raised great kids. My stepbrother and stepsister, and my brother's a police officer, and my sister went to college, graduated, and has her own business. And so my father, the person he is now, is a good man, and I love him. And we're working on rebuilding our relationship. It's a work in progress. But to me, that it just shows true forgiveness.
Yeah.
Because a man who literally you could blame for so much, right? And it's not, but at the same time, I get it. I understand people go through stuff in their life during certain times, and we really don't know, the full details of what happened there, between my mom and my dad. And I don't really open up that can anymore, but I have to look at things from different perspectives.
Yeah.
Now that I went through my own journey and I did what I did and I've hurt people, I have to look at it and say, like, it's not on me to judge, but it is for me to forgive and maybe not reconcile with them and be friends with them or be a part of them, but give them a chance. Because that's all I've ever wanted was another chance, and I got it. So I feel like he deserved it, and I'm glad he is the man who he is today.
Well, look, thank you. And see, we didn't even touch any of this the first time. That's why I knew in my heart, I need to get in front of you again. So thank you. And I say that because what I want people to get from you, Carlos, like selfishly, in a good way, I want people to understand that you had every reason to never forgive him. You had every reason to blame everything on him. And yes, that definitely started the spiral, 100%. It sent you down a decade of destruction. But through the grace of God, you became so good at being bad that they had to put you away. But that changed. And we're going to go back to that in a minute. But I want to just touch on your dad again because you're being real. And I appreciate that because he raised another family, and most people would say, wait, what about your anger, your resentment? They got what you did and all that. And those are all valid. But again, at the end of the day, it's how you go to bed at night. It's the peace that you feel. And I love that you recognize that you got a second chance at life. 3 years ago, I believe, give or take, you got out of prison. That means every time you fill out an application, you got to check that felony box. And that's what I keep thinking about you. This guy, people complain about getting a job and they have nothing. College education, the whole bit. You have to check a box that changes the way people look at you, changes the way people judge you. In spite of that, you grew to be more loving because there's a beast in you. You had to become a beast. You wouldn't survive, let alone 10 years of what you did. 3 years in solitary confinement. But see, that is the grace of God that he has the favor over your life. And that's why you're just warming up on the great things you're doing. And that's why I want to speak over you, Carlos, because you're just warming up. Because you showing grace, you know you're a war. You got nothing to prove. And I know I wasn't in prison, but being a fighter all my life, I know that I have to walk away from things when people, poke at you. And every part of the man, especially the world you came from, you're like, bro, you don't even know. But you lay it down. And I applaud you for that. And I just want to speak that into you, Carlos, because you don't have to go to Google or youth camps or places and do any of that. Nobody would blame you. But see, you're better than that, and you're doing great things with your hurt. You are a living testimony of taking your pain and making purpose out of it. And that's why I wanted to see you again. Because see, when people complain, I'm like, dude, you don't even understand. And you came out. So let's pass jail for a moment. You get out. I want people to paint this picture. Paint this with us. You're out of jail. You're a free man. That's all you think about, I would imagine, for a while. But now you're free. What challenges now started for you?
Everything was a challenge. I didn't even know how to set up an email. I didn't know how to do public transportation and nothing. Like everything was new. I went in, there was...
You went at 19, right?
Yeah. So I went in, there was flip phones. I got out, there was smartphones, just to give you an idea of the difference in the way it was. But also like now just finding my place in the world. I had an identity and I knew who I was in prison.
Yeah.
And I created identity that gave me a purpose, whether it was good or bad. Yeah. I had a purpose. And then when I transformed my life, which was very difficult in prison, I discovered, okay, well, I still have a purpose. I'm helping people, lifers and other people get into these groups and learn the things that I taught myself in solitary. And I'm seeing the transformation. I feel like I'm doing good. But now I'm out in the world, right? And I have to start over. So everything was a challenge. But I think that challenge, I never looked at it as like a negative thing. I always looked at it as like something that I thrive off of. And so for me, the challenge was a beautiful journey. Yeah. Everything, every challenge, every difficult task that came my way, I embraced it and I fell in love with it. And I think that's why I've accomplished so much in 3 years, is because I don't run from the challenge. I go look for it and then I figure a way to get through it and accomplish it. So me having that mindset, which comes from me knowing that I had overcome the biggest challenge of my life. There's nothing else in life that I will ever experience worse than what I already did. And so knowing that, it's a certain peace in that, it's a freedom in that.
Absolutely.
Because when you feel like there's really nothing in this world that can break you, you're not afraid to pursue your dreams and meaningful pursuits. And with so much faith in that whatever happens is part of your journey, It's like you don't worry about really much anything. So that's my life, and that's what I did when I got out. It's
Yeah.
challenging, but I was like, I love this
Yeah.
because I'm not in prison anymore, which was the place that I feel that was to me, making it out of prison was my biggest fear in life was dying in prison, and I no longer have that fear. So nothing else. I really don't fear anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love that, and I wanted to put content to everything we're talking about because sometimes it's easy. Oh, this person went to jail, this person did, and we go by it so fast and not realize. Because I think that's why you don't complain a lot. That's why you are grateful for traffic, right? Tell me I'm right.
I'm grateful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because see, people go. They ask me all the time. I go, look, I had enough close calls in life in other areas. Not comparing mine, but everybody has their journey. But I don't need my purpose of this show and purpose of people I talk to is to take from our wisdom, our mistakes, our highlights, our strength. We take from each other so that we can go out there and help people, right? And I think for you, again, I wanted people to really get a real picture this time around with you. Like to really understand that you were the top of the food chain of what that was. Now let's go back to solitary confinement. Now let's go back to probably that first 6 months, first year of anger, calling the shots, getting creative, status, to the switch over, the transformation, the renewedness, the rebirth of you. And then I do remember what you shared, and we're going to refresh everyone's memory, that when you were ready to get out, it wasn't just like, hey guys, I'm out of here. You had to pay a severe price to step out of that world, literally. But God gave you the shot, and then we'll get to the good stuff that has its own. So tell us about when in those 3 years of solitary confinement, you felt the transformation starting.
Yeah. When I first went to solitary confinement, I had this goal of getting out in 3 years. That's what I was told. And I felt like, okay, 3 years in solitary confinement is a long time, but time in prison is different than out here, the concept of it. And so, we don't count days or weeks or months in prison. When you have so much time or you're a lifer, you really don't count anything. But if anything, you're looking at years. Like, so 3 years really didn't seem like that long in that state of mind that I was in back then. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this time and I'm going to get out and go right back to, what I was doing before. I'm just sitting down for 3 years, basically. And I remember having that, and it was still hard, but I was like, convincing myself that I could do it every day in the beginning stages. And then I remember having contact with a man back there, Brother Malcolm, and I'll never forget his name. And I never saw the man, but I could communicate with him through a fishing line that we created in order to pass notes to one another. And so I communicated with him, and he told me that, he was back there for the same reason I was, which was being validated. And back in those days when you're validated, you don't ever make it. You'll never get out of the shoe. They don't have to ever let you out according to the rules that they have within CDCR back then. And so for me, like knowing that this man was back there for over 20 years in solitary because he had been validated, and I'm in here for the same thing. The thought of 3 years kind of went out the window. I almost felt foolish because I actually believed them that I would be out in 3 years. But he was going to committee every year and was getting denied. So I gave up. At that point, I was like, I can't be in here for that long. It broke me. Like I'm man enough to admit that, like I've been broken to the point where I wanted to end my life. And had I had the opportunity in that moment, I would have done it. It's just in solitary, it's not easy to end your life.
So let me ask you something, Carlos, because again, I don't want to. I need us all to really comprehend what you're saying, is that you're in solitary confinement, and our system, and this is why you're so passionate about it, I think I'm right, is because it's not meant to help us be better. It's meant to break us and keep us. Because think about it, not only would you have wanted to take your life, call it a day, you then at that point, like, man, I got to stay hard because I'll get eaten alive. But also now there's no hope. People go, what do you think the most dangerous thing is? To me, lack of hope. When you don't feel hopeful for anything, a better marriage, a better friendship, a better life, a better career, a better anything, I mean, what do you got?
Yeah.
Right? They say you want to kill somebody, take away their hope.
Yeah.
That's how you kill somebody. And that's my opinion, right? And then for you now are sitting here going, 3 years is nothing. But wait a minute, this guy's 20 years for the exact same thing I did. So now you're feeling anger, despair, depressed, betrayed, hopeless. And I'm bringing you back there and thank you for letting me go there with you, because I think people can look at you now, and we'll get to that at the end, and go, oh, no. They need to understand a little bit, to the best of our ability, obviously. You're sitting there by yourself. The very things that put you there gave you honor within that prison system, but now you're alone. So what happened as that started to continue? You went through all these emotions.
Yeah, it was a mental battle every day, and to the point where I wrote a letter to my mother, basically like a suicide note in a sense, just apologizing to her. I just felt at this time my mother was homeless, so it's hard to really explain that feeling, but just imagine being in a solitary confinement and your mother's homeless and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And so for me, I made the decision that I wasn't doing anything good in this world. And so I got into a really bad state of just wanting to end it. And I prepared mentally. I became at peace with it. I was okay with that. And I planned it. And literally days before I was going to do it is when the chaplain came into my life. And it, the chaplain doesn't come to solitary confinement. That's what people, I try to get them to understand. Nobody does. You don't ever see anybody unless it's like medical people or correctional guards or, the wardens coming by, looking at you to see, basically just to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. But nobody comes there. So for this man to come there during Christmas time and hand out Bibles and Christmas cards, and not only that, but give me hope. He
see right there.
He handed me hope, and he believed in me before I believed in myself. And for so long, no man had believed in me like that, and when he did, it was like, okay, I gave me something to hold on to not give up, and to see if he was right. And that's all I needed. And that's why I know that why I speak and I do what I do today is because I understand the power of words, and I understand the power of somebody believing in you and somebody like caring and giving you their time. Like it works. It's worked for my life. And so that's why I like being here and these platforms we have is so important, because you never know that person that's listening and they can gain something from it.
Yeah.
And it can give them hope.
Yeah.
So
no, and I appreciate you sharing that, Carlos, because like I mentioned to you, when you don't have hope, it's the worst, right? That's what, to me, it's suffocation of oxygen. So let's get to something, because I want people to hear this next part, is when you decided, let's fast forward past the chaplain and hope was coming, you're starting to feel hopeful. How did you end up getting out? And then that's number one. And right behind it, when you're trying to get out, you were given a goodbye present that almost took you out. So can we talk about those two things?
Yeah. So after the chaplain visited me and I started to work on myself every day and read my Bible every day. And one of the correctional guards was a believer, and he came by and he saw me reading the Bible and he called me over and we started talking. And he was just telling me how he was a big reader and he used to read books every night. He was on third shift, so he didn't have nothing else to do. He would read books and wanted to borrow his books after he read them. As long as I gave him back, he'd always give me a new one. And so I did. And I remember those books transformed my life, my way of thinking, my mindset, because they were powerful books, like The Power of Now and New Earth and Man's Search for Meaning and all these books that people talk about. I was reading them in solitary. So as I was reading, I remember I kept like feeling more hopeful for life, for like my future and just my purpose on earth, even if it's just getting out of solitary, going back to the prison yard, general population, and helping men. That was the thing. So when I got out, and the books and everything I did during solitary, helped me to go into the committee and articulate myself well enough to get out. Had I not had done that, I would have never been able to convince them to let me out of solitary. I would have still would have been there.
Yeah. So can I ask you something, Carlos? Because I think this is such a great point. Is that the difference of the Malcolm, right?
Yeah.
I want to go back there for a minute because you never met him. You're communicating with someone through the old school can system, right? Like the
Fishing line, yeah.
the fishing line. You look notes.
Yeah.
In that, I would think the reality of despairness came, like you said. Wait, but then through the chaplain, to the prison guard, and there's a couple friends of mine in law enforcement. I'm going to say this to you. You know who you are. They have a hard time in law enforcement and they challenges, right? And I always speak to them like, look, you don't know who God's going to put in your life. And see, had that guy been a bully, like probably most of those guards, he would have just mocked you, right?
Yep.
But he didn't. He was a believer. So he, in those books, ultimately helped you switch because it empowered you and it helped you. And I just want to point that out because so many people don't realize that you started this story, your life story, by saying one person. People don't realize the effect of one person. And it's not to blame your dad, and yes, you had every right to at that time, but it goes the other way. What if the one person, like the chaplain, and then the prison guard, helped set it on the right course? So now you were able to get out. They sent you to Gen Pop, right? And there, how much time did you have left, technically speaking?
So at the time, I still had about 7 years. But when I got out, I remember I got out of solitary confinement. Before I got out of solitary, I knew I had to go and confront the powers that be, the people who were in charge that took over when I left, and let them know that I no longer wanted to be a part of that life. So that was the first thing. So I did that. I went out there and I did that, and they were like, okay. And then 2 days later, I got stabbed 2 times, and fought back, and I was able to walk back to my cell. After I looked at my wounds, I was like, okay, it wasn't too bad. I walked back to my cell, and my cellmate helped me stitch up my wound, like I was taught. And I remember, as painful as that was, it really felt good to know that, like, I was done, and I was ready to go out there, and it empowered me, and I was ready to go out there and help people and do what I wanted to do, which was to organize groups.
So let's go back. I'm going to take you back there because I need people to understand this. And guys, let me tell you, every time when you're around me, I don't say it's a written rule, but don't complain, don't vent, don't gossip, because you have a guy here that, number one, he's in solitary. Number two, you're getting into general population. So all those you're looking for jobs and all the things you're trying to figure out, you now got to where you thought. You got stabbed twice. You're stitching yourself up with the help of your cellmate, and you're actually feeling good, going, okay, I'm going to get on to my good stuff. And I stop people because, man, you gotta get together. These people got to get together in the society and where we are in life. So I just commend you so much, Carlos, for that. So please continue.
Yeah, and the hardest thing about getting stabbed was, for me, not retaliating. That was the hardest thing for me, because so much of my life, most of it, was just about if somebody does something to you, you do something to them.
Of course.
Right? And
correct me if I'm wrong, but you're still there for a while.
Yeah,
at
still
that
there.
point. So you also, it's not over. I mean, you're still basically, I just want people to really understand what you're saying. You got stabbed. There's not like, okay, hey, thanks, nice job interview.
Yeah.
They could do it again.
Right.
You had to make a decision. Are you going to retaliate? Because that could have ended it for you. Because then they're going to retaliate harder. There's more of them than you.
Yeah.
Or you can trust God, and I believe that's the direction that you went.
Yeah, and somebody that when I was speaking a few weeks ago, somebody asked me this question for the first time was, well, after you got stabbed, why do you think they didn't come back, and why do you think they left you alone? And I thought about it, and I was like, because in that world, people respect somebody who is committed to something, who's going to die for something, whether they believe it or not. They respect it. I remember our enemies when I was out in the gang, and even in prison, our enemies, there would always be that one guy that it just was just our terror. He was he was like one of their main guys that was doing all the terror on our side. And we had those guys too. But I remember there was like a respect there though, because even though he was causing all this terror in our neighborhood, you respected because like this guy is committed. He's like
Committed to being crazy.
He's crazy. Like
Yeah.
this guy, he is suicidal. He'll come in here. He'll do like. So I think that once they saw that after I got stabbed, I stitched up my wound and I walked back out and I went to the chapel and I started organizing groups with lifers and I was teaching the things I was learning and I didn't retaliate and I didn't waver and I kept pushing forward on my beliefs. They respected that and I feel that's why they left me alone. And I think honestly that that's a powerful thing because of that, after a while, a couple of years, some of the same people who looked at me negatively when I changed my life were coming into those groups wanting to be a part of it.
Amen. Carl, and this, we can end the show right now, and that is, to me, what I knew about you. And this is why I had compelling to want to speak to you again, because I think we all missed it the first time. Right? Because to me, I want people to really understand what you're saying, to grasp the reality that you had every reason, and all of us have our reasons. Maybe someone didn't have money. We all have reasons. But I always say, is your goals, is your vision, is your purpose greater than the challenges before? And the only way that's answered is by us believing in ourselves, having faith, and going to do something with it, right? So I love that you shared that, and I appreciate that because that's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing. And I do believe, because look, in my own, I didn't go through what you did, obviously, but I did go through my fair of people betraying me, backstabbing me, you name it. But I held to what of my own. And I always say people bless, not people please. Because to me, people bless means you're doing it because it's something that's in you and people will be blessed by it. Not the other way around, people pleasing. It's like, I think Carlos will like this. One thing is being hospitable, and one thing is just doing it to fill a gap. So now you're blessing people in prison. You're truly starting to live your calling that you feel, new purpose. Tell me what it was like on the outside. How was your mom doing and your sister at that time? Now that you're a better person.
Yeah, they were still very broken, I would say, and destructive and negative, and they still were dealing with a lot of pain, a lot of from their traumas, and many things happened to them even after I went to prison. So they hadn't experienced what I experienced that helped me to transform my life, which was hitting rock bottom. But they were just going through life continuously, basically the same from when I left.
Right.
So, I realized after a while that, you're born into a family, but then also you create one.
Yep.
So for me, I always knew that, all right, I won't allow myself to get pulled into this way of thinking that I have to do anything. Like I don't have to be a part of a family that they don't want to change. I can go create a new one and fulfill my purpose to help others.
That's wisdom.
Yeah.
That's wisdom.
So, but thanks to God, my mother and my sister now are doing really good, and I feel that a lot of the reason is because when I got out, I wasn't just talking about it. People in prison talk a lot about what they're going to do and they want to change, but then they get out and they go back. I think I had to prove it. I think a lot of people knew who I was and knew I was going to die for that. That was my mindset back then, that I would die for that identity that I created, that gang that I represented. So for me to say I'm this new person now, it was one of those things where good, but underneath that good that I would hear, there was always that we'll see. And I knew that. And even within myself, I knew I had to prove it. So when I got out of prison, and it really drove me through many challenges in life. That was like, I'm representing so many men and women in prison who want that second chance. I'm not going to get out and ruin that for maybe them one day when they get a shot. So it was always my mindset. Yeah.
And I love that, and I appreciate that, because look, so many people are given second chances in life and they don't grasp them. And when I was speaking to a previous guest, and I said, look, at the end of the day, it's not only what happens to us, but what are we going to do once we realize it? And two, how are we going to bless others with it? Because I really feel it's almost selfish to not live out a testimony of righteousness, because there's people out there that don't have hope, that need to hear a message. And we're coming up to the holiday season, right? So in that holiday season brings out a lot. Like you said, that chaplain specifically went in the holiday season to you, because he knows that that's some of the worst times of the year for people, right? It's a realization that you're alone, but you were literally alone, right? So now, to kind of give context to all that, so now when you got out, yes, you're grateful, yes, but what was the starting point? Because now you have a felony, you have limited money, limited resources, probably not a huge group of go Carlos, I would think, maybe a few. I want people again to see, because where you are today and where God's going to take you, I know is going to be amazing. But I need them to understand that you had every disadvantage. So forget surviving, all the things you did. Now you're out. Now you're in your mid-30s?
Late 30s.
Late 30s?
Now.
But then.
Yeah, I was mid-30s.
Mid-30s.
Mid-30s, yeah.
Starting over. Flip phone, smartphone, felony, no particular life skills in the world precise, So tell us your mindset and what or who, other than your faith, started helping shape that.
Yeah, it's a great question, because I didn't know like who I could become until I was thrown in the world. Like I got out with limiting beliefs. I got out with a mindset like most people that get out of prison. Just get out, get a job in a warehouse, keep your head down, and don't ever try to do it too much. And I say there's nothing wrong with working in a warehouse, or nothing wrong with doing that kind of work at all. But if you don't want to do it, you shouldn't do it, and you shouldn't be limited by that because of something you went through in the past. So for me, that was the mindset getting out. Like, I just want to get out, enjoy freedom. I want to get off parole, figure out like what I'm going to do, where I'm going to go. But I always knew that I had something valuable. I always kept it within me. Like the value that when I was helping the men in prison, the lifers, when I was seeing their transformation, I knew that was valuable. I identified that. I just didn't know that I can come out here and create that and adapt it into the world out here like I have. But I feel that that's why a lot of my life is hard work and just being persistent and facing fears head on and challenges. But a lot of it is just, it's beyond my own understanding, truly. I give it to God, really, because I mean, so many things happen in my life that I can't really explain how it happened.
Yeah.
It's divine. It's beyond my own understanding, really. And, so I say that when I got out, I didn't ever think I'd be where I'm at right now. But once I started to catch momentum, once I started to put in work and I believed in myself more and more and more, and I started to get feedback from people on what I was doing, and it was helping people, impacting lives. And I'm like, I kept pursuing it.
Right.
I kept pursuing. I was like, all right, let me keep going. Let me keep working at this, getting better. And it just evolves and develops.
Well, you wouldn't become, so you would have been late 20s to become a shot caller. So you don't get to that level. I know enough about prison without being a little tenacious. Okay. So obviously it is in you. It was just the wrong field.
Yeah.
Ultimately, but you had to do it. Now, what do you think? Is there a moment, because you're speaking, you're sharing the good word, you're talking to people, where did that happen? Because you obviously had to go apply for a job. You had to find something. So what was your first job out of prison? And when do you feel the yield, the fork came where that you started stepping towards what you're doing today?
Well, when I got out of prison, I applied for multiple jobs, 3 jobs total, and I got denied for all 3 because, I had no work history. I had all these tattoos. I was on parole.
Yeah, everything.
All this stuff. So I got denied, but finally I was able to land a part-time job at a nonprofit organization that could only afford to pay me minimum wage. And I did that. But every other waking hour outside of that, I was learning business, because I realized after doing research that I could take what I have and put it into a business.
Yeah.
And so I started to educate myself on business, started to learn what's been going on and catching up. And then I was able to get into a program through Drucker School of Management, and that like it gave me that education I needed to take my vision and put it into an actual business and create that with the help of others and professionals and mentors and all that. But you said the moment that I felt like everything changed from me just feeling like I just need to go work and not pursue anything else besides what I'm doing now. I think it was a moment, and he probably doesn't even know this, but I hope he listens to this podcast. Peter Meyerhoff, the Shot Caller podcast, he came and saw, just so happens I was working at that nonprofit. He walked in and he started to talk to other people about his life. He did 10 years in prison, and he been out a little while, and he had a podcast, and he was doing all this meaningful work. And I remember hearing him talk, and I went over to him and introduced myself. I was only like 3 months out, and he was just like, he had a moment with me. We talked, and I just kind of, again, borrowed the belief from him, because he told me, he was like, man, look, I've did this much time. I did this. This is what I've been accomplishing. You know, I'm a millionaire now. And I'm like, it's possible. And that's all I needed.
Yeah.
That's all I needed to see and hear. And
That's
I
it.
just went from there. And that was like that moment. And we're still friends to this day. But yeah,
I love that.
It's always and I have a little post-it that I have in my office, and it says, you're just one person away. And I look at that every day of my life, because it's always been one person that I meet that changes the trajectory of my life, a decision that helps me to like make a decision that I've been contemplating on. It's always that. And every individual is here that's here on this earth is here for a purpose.
Yeah.
And there's value in everybody. And so when I look at people, I see that. I know there's something there, and let me try to figure out what that is. So yeah, that's how it is. That's that moment was about that time.
And I appreciate you answering that. And there is, and we broke down a lot. And we're going to have to do a part 3, man. We're going to have to do a part 3 of Carlos, because this is some good stuff. But I just thank you for letting me go through each stage and breaking it, because it honestly went by so fast. And I just wanted people to understand each obstacle. That God giving you those books started opening up your mind, that help you speak better at your appeals, that got, and then on top of that, the chaplain doing that work in there, you then third job, and the next thing you know, you saw the hope, something that years ago you lost it. And I love that, because see, you are now doing something with it. And there's so much to unpack, Carlos, and that's why I'm excited just to share with you what we're doing we're opening up a new studio of ours. So, to come out, you definitely come out, because I want to do more of this, because our main other company, the reason I'm sharing that is because it's to be a bridge. It's to be a bridge, right? You said we're one person away, but I want to be an asset to not a liability people when they meet me, to the best of my ability. People go, isn't that a lot of pressure? I go, yeah, but I don't take it as pressure, because it's an honor, and because we're human. So I love it. Well, I'm going to wrap up 2 things, because I didn't realize that time flew and we barely got in. But can you tell us quickly what you're doing today? That way people understand. And guys, sorry we had to cut, but I love it. That should be part 3, more unpacked with Carlos. So all that, give us a tidbit of the blessed work you're doing today.
Yeah, I'm doing God's work. I'm doing what I was put on this earth to do. Truly believe that and feel that every single day. Through different avenues. So, writing books, podcasting as well, leadership training, speaking, youth programs, like just giving back. I always look for ways to help people.
Yeah.
And going back into the prisons as well. And I have a prison program that I'm doing now. And
what does that look like, real quick? What does that mean? That you go visit, you go speak, what do you do? Because obviously, like, do you go back to the one that you went to, different ones?
Yeah, I go back to the one that I was in, the exact same yard I was on.
Are you able to share which that was?
Yeah, Centinela State Prison.
Okay.
A yard is where I paroled, and I go back in, and I still see some of the same people there that are fighting their battle to get out. So they come to the groups that I have, and we do workshops, and this warrior in the garden, I took to Soledad, 60 men, gave them copies. We did a workshop on it. They do the work in the book, send it back to me. I give them a certificate, write them a letter to the parole board.
So
you
good.
know. So
So good. We're gonna
yeah,
cross over a lot, Carlos. I know our team knows, and they know my heart. And it's not about us.
yeah,
It's not about us. I love that, man. That is that. I just want to commend you. I don't know how many times you hear it, that you are taking what life gave you, and through the grace of God, you are. There's a song I'm gonna send it to you. It's one of my favorite songs of all time. It's the way I'm ending this year. It's called "Take It All Back" by Torrin Wells, and it's a beautiful song. And it just talks about everything the enemy took from you, God's gonna give you tenfold back. Right?
yeah.
I love that song, and I love seeing that. So, you're doing that through different forms. So, like last time, you had a chance to ask me a question at the end of the show. So, what would you like to ask me? And then we're going to leave everybody hanging because there's so much more I want to talk to you about. But for the sake of the time of our show, what would you like to ask me or share any of that?
I think the most important question that any of us could ever answer, which is, what do you ultimately want to accomplish?
Yeah, great question. I want to accomplish more than anything in my life is to give people hope. I believe that God and Jesus are hope, and I am blessed to have hope. And therefore, because I am blessed and I know my identity is, really nothing. I mean, I'll get shaken. I might be knocked off, but at the end of the day, my balance is centered around that. So through different means, like you said, I want to use my platforms to give people hope, help create opportunities, to help them believe in themselves, and to create the best domino effect that the world can do.
Amazing. Thank you.
I love it. Guys, sorry to cut it short. I feel cheating. Seriously, I love this time with Carlos, but I also know that we have to maintain some of our structure. I feel like one of those good church services, and they have to end it because the next service is coming.
Yeah.
So I guess it's probably good. But Carlos, thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for taking the time. Thank you for sharing vulnerability, but also strength. There's a beautiful, humble spirit. I'm really glad that the man I knew through seeing you online, through our podcast, that you're very much that man in person. And I know this is the first of many. So, Carlos, thank you guys. I'm going to do a special when we do this one. We're going to back it up. We're going to do some. We're going to buy a couple books from him. So we will sell. We will have him sell some of our books. We're going to give away some of his books when we air your podcast. Share the love. And guys, till next episode. Thank you for tuning in for Positive Trash, and God bless.
Thank you.